This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch or get 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
Hello.
Yeah, g'day.
Don't move away from the microphone when I say hello.
A plate just fell over.
Don't you dare ever disrespect me like that again.
I will, and I'll do it very soon.
Hello.
Hey man, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm alright, I got my coffee.
Just starting off with a very generic intro to a podcast. But this is no ordinary podcast.
No.
Because this is 2 white men talking about film.
We've got to stop bringing that up, man. I feel like it throws people off right away. We've already lost a bunch of new listeners from saying that, I think.
That we're white?
Yeah.
Alright. Well, let's not go down this road. Let's just talk about the films we're here to talk about, because we're here to talk about films, not movies.
Yeah, we're highbrow.
We're highbrow. We're talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Now, I said franchise if you heard that, not just movie. Because what is this, AJ?
Oh well, I'm glad you asked, Richard, because this is film franchise Fortnights on the Cult Popture podcast, where every fortnight we watch, discuss, dissect, disdain a different film franchise, and yeah, so we've been doing this for over 3 years now. We'll every fortnight we're like, have you watched fucking Earbud 7 yet? We're like, oh god. And this week we're doing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I believe is one of our last of a certain type of subgenre of franchise.
Yeah, like big horror franchises, but ones specifically that have like a very iconic murderer. Like, I wouldn't say the Amityville Horror fits into this. It's the same kind of franchise, but it doesn't have like a mascot, you know?
Yeah, this is in line with Friday the 13th and Halloween and
Nightmare on Elm Street.
And Nightmare on Elm Street, which is probably the most different out of Nightmare, because all the other villains are these big hulking weirdos, whereas...
Well, I'd say Hellraiser's the odd one out.
Actually, no, I didn't even think of Hellraiser, yeah.
But you said it, but you just didn't think of it.
I didn't think of it. Okay, fine. It's the final of our...
It's the final Friday.
Our iconic 70s, 80s horror villain franchises. And also the final of the trilogy of hulking murderers with
nice.
Friday the 13th and Halloween.
Nice.
Is that good? I'm midway through my morning coffee, so you will hear me perk up as we go through.
And then have to go do a poo.
No comment.
All right, so the first film we're here to talk about today is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. This is the first of 8 films. It was directed by Tobe Hooper. The late Tobe Hooper.
So it is Toby.
It is Toby, yeah.
Because it's spelt Tobe.
Yeah. I always say in my head Tobe, but it is Toby. What's this one about?
So this is about a road trip of young adult teenage. How old are they supposed to be?
Like 20.
Yeah, because one of them looks about 38. But I'll let it slide for now.
It's their 20s, I'd say, yeah.
Right. They're on a road trip through Texas, and they get to their place where they're staying, which is this old rundown house, and they go exploring, and eventually one by one they all end up at the neighbor's house, where they get murdered by a giant hulking killer that was affectionately referred to as Leatherface. And
Why is he called that?
Because he wears a mask made of human skin. Or like other people's faces.
Dark.
Oh, I don't like this. Turn it off. And he kills at least 2 of them with a chainsaw.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah. It's never... There's... The only time we see a chainsaw pierce flesh in the entire film is when Leatherface falls over and chainsaws himself in the leg.
There you go.
This film, actually, because the main character, Sally Hardesty, jumps through 2 windows in this film, which is more than there are people we see get massacred by a chainsaw. So it really should be called Sally Jumps Out a Window.
The Texas window jumping fiasco.
Fracas.
Fracas. So he kills, I think there's 5 of them. He kills all but one of them, which is Sally, where it turns out this whole like backwoods redneck family's in on it, and they like capture her and they feed her blood to what just looks like a straight up dead body, but is actually their barely alive grandfather.
Yeah.
And then at the end she escapes, and one of them gets hit by a truck, and then she hops on a pickup truck and drives away as Leatherface spins around in the Texas sunset with his chainsaw. It's very scary. It's a very scary movie.
Yeah, the ending's very intense.
Yeah,
because it's very like quick cuts between him wildly flinging a chainsaw around with one hand and her drenched in blood screaming. But let's talk. What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
High 80s.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll give you a clue. This is our 88th episode of the podcast. It's our 88th franchise. What do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
88.
It does.
Wow.
I didn't even do my little, doing the opposite.
Yeah, it turns out it's 35.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
And it's got 82% audience score. It's interesting that it's higher with critics, because a lot of these movies...
Yeah.
The fans love them, but the critics hate them.
That's the thing, though, is this one felt distinctly more classy than the others.
You reckon?
I'd seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre once before. I saw it at the house of a girl I liked because she was like, "Do you want to watch a movie?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh yeah, put on this movie because I'm not scared of it.
And I didn't really find it that scary when I first watched it. I would have been 20 or 19. But I remember not really liking it. I remember thinking it was like a whole bunch of nothing that leads nowhere. But then watching it again this time, when it gets to the point where the old dead grandpa comes out and they start feeding his blood to her, I was like, this is fucking dark. Like, this has got some weird spirituality to it that I'm really digging.
It's interesting.
And I kind of understood it after. I feel like I really liked the first one. Like, it was
interesting, yeah. And we'll talk once we've gone through all the films. We'll talk a bit about how it compares to the other kind of franchises we've done. But it's interesting you say it's classy, because what I liked about it was that it's really like grimy.
For sure. Yeah.
And one of the things I actually like the most about this film is, so at the end, they hold they're holding her down with her head over a bucket, and the barely alive grandpa is supposed to like split her head open with a mallet, but he's obviously too weak, and so it kind of just, he keeps dropping the mallet or just barely bonks her on the head. But her screaming is so like non-glamorous. It's not like Scream Queen screaming. It's someone genuinely fearing for their life.
Yeah.
And like, you compare that, especially like when we get to the later ones, like the 2013 reboot. It's very like, help, look at my tits. But whereas this is like genuine fear. And I think that's what really sold the ending for me of being like, holy fuck, this is intense.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I meant by classy. It's not classy in what it's depicting, but it feels like they're trying to make a real film and not trying to make like a generic splatter horror. Because was this the first one of these?
Of the ones we've done, yep. Yep. So Halloween and Friday the 13th were 1980, and Nightmare was 1984. I think that's when Halloween was.
Because
Halloween was 1978, so it was still 4 years after this, but yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it's doing something new. I guess,
well, that's one thing.
The last one we've watched.
Yeah, take this with a grain of salt. But I read this a few years ago that like Texas Chainsaw Massacre like completely changed the what we associate horror as being, kind of thing. Back then, it was like, go out to the country, stay in the middle of nowhere with your friends. That's the safest place you can be, you know. And now it's like the countryside is where horror movies happen. But before that, it was the idea of a horror movie set in the country was ridiculous.
Ludicrous.
Yeah. But the inception for this franchise, because it does say it's based on a true story, but it's not. It's very loosely inspired by Ed Gein, the serial killer. Although
he actually, he's not.
He's not a serial killer.
He's not. That's a misnomer. He's not.
Because he only killed 2 people.
Yeah, he didn't kill enough people to be classed as a serial killer.
I have that written down as an actually, and I was. I knew you'd get it.
I watched this one with a group of friends, and my buddy Steven.
I watched this with Ed Gein.
Oh, cool. What did he think? Was he like, Was it like Tommy Wiseau watching The Disaster Artist?
Yeah, he's like, the lighting was wrong in the first scene.
Yeah. My friend Steven was so obsessed with it being based on a true story, and he looked it up, and he was like, oh, it says on Wikipedia that it's like based on a true story in the sense that it's like inspired by the political climate at the time. And he started going on about Nixon, who was president at the time. And I was like, Steven, what about this film makes it about Nixon? Like I was expecting something a little bit more like concrete, and he was like, I don't know, just said it on Wikipedia, and we got a massive shouting match about it. And then I looked it up. I had to like look on like a bunch of think pieces, and apparently when Toby Hooper said it's based on the political climate, what he meant was that because it says based on a true story and it's not really a true story, it is inspired by the political climate, and that it's 1970s fake news, essentially. Like it's telling you it's true when it's not, to inspire fear, which is what Nixon did, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. To be 100% fair, Nixon was not president when this film was released. He resigned from the office 2 months before it came out.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously he was president while they were making it. But just a little fun fact for you there. Just so I know all our American listeners are going to be...
Yeah, Nixon got impeached, and they had already shot Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but hadn't released, and then Nixon gets impeached, and Toby Hooper's like, damn it, God, why can't he just stay president for a bit? I need to post this movie. I've been YouTubing and podcasting for too long, dude.
But apparently the actual idea for the franchise came from when Toby Hooper was standing in a hardware store, or the hardware section of a store, during the Christmas rush. While contemplating how he could possibly get out of the crowd, he spotted the chainsaws. And he was like,
I'll make a movie about this.
Massacre all of them.
It's like, I want to say it's based on a true story, so if I do it for real, then maybe I can get away with it. Imagine a serial killer making a movie based on a true story about their killings.
That'd be pretty cool.
I
guess that is the plot of, spoilers to Scream 3. Yeah. So, filming sounded fucking awful for this film. So here's some stories from the set. A lot of blood on Marilyn Burns' body, who plays Sally Hardesty, the main character, is hers. She cut herself a lot while running through the forest, the branches.
I've got a regular Leonardo DiCaprio over here. And she kept acting.
Well, there's another time when at the end, when they cut her finger to feed it to the grandfather, she moved her finger so that the blade would actually cut her, because apparently it wasn't looking right with the blood coming from the end of the thing. And I would need to rewatch the film, but I don't think there's a cut from when, like a second shot from when her finger is cut to when the granddad sucks on it. So that's pretty gross. Whereas in Django Unchained, when he cuts himself and then wipes the blood, there's a cut in between it, and it's fake blood wiped on Broomhilda's face, just in case anyone's wondering. So because of the low budget, about $140,000, they shot very long hours so that they wouldn't need to rent the equipment for as many days. And one example of this was, so John Dugan, who played the barely alive grandpa we've spoken about, after getting the old age makeup, he decided he never wanted to go through that again, meaning that all of the scenes with him had to be filmed in the same session before he took the makeup off. So this took about 36 hours, 5 of which took to put the makeup on. So during a brutal summer heat wave where the average temperature was over 100 degrees, which is, if you're listening, There's like 38 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
A large portion of it spent filming the dinner scene, with him wearing a very heavy suit and necktie, sitting in a room filled with dead animals and rotting food with no air conditioning or electric fans. Apparently, the stench from the rotting food and people's growing body odor was so terrible that some crew members passed out or became sick from the smell, and people were having to run outside to throw up and then come back and continue to shoot.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's filmmaking right there.
Edwin Neal, who played the hitchhiker, said, "Filming that scene was the worst experience of my life, and I've been in Vietnam with people trying to kill me, so I guess that shows how bad it was," because he actually fought in Vietnam. But... yeah, and also like Gunnar Hansen, who plays Leatherface, only had one shirt, so he had to wear it the entire time. And he said people wouldn't like stand next to him. And it's like, dude, it's because you're wearing someone's face.
It's because he smells bad. We should call him Stinky Face, not Leatherface.
Still got some more bad stories. It's not even it's probably the worst story from the set, but I've got more.
Okay.
I didn't put them in ascending order.
There was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre that actually happened during the making of the film.
Just wait.
No,
that didn't happen. So at the end, I mentioned when Leatherface chainsaws himself by accident. The only time we see a chainsaw pierce flesh in the film, it's actually they had like a metal plate over his leg with some like meat on top of it. So like, chainsaws that. But then of course, if you chainsaw metal, it heats up a lot. So it like instantly heated up to very hot, and so his scream there is real.
Oh god!
Because it burned the shit out of his leg. Because of all the shitty experiences during filming, the iconic ending of Leatherface, like I said, like holding his chainsaw in one hand and violently flinging it around, that came because he wanted to scare the director for the way he was treating the cast during filming. So it wasn't supposed to be that, but he just wanted to be like, the director to be like, what the fuck is he doing?
What the fuck?
What the fuck?
It's great. It's such a good ending. I was talking to my friend Lucas, who we watched it with, and he was like, when we were watching it, and he starts flailing around, everyone in the room was like giggling and like making fun of him, but I was like, this is amazing. I was like, yeah, I agree. Like it's such a ghostly, kind of chilling, chaotic place to end the film.
Yeah, it's a very chaotic ending. So John Larroquette does the appears. Well, it doesn't appear, but his voice appears. He does the narration at the start.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And he would return to do a couple more, but he was paid one marijuana cigarette to do that.
Who's John Larroquette? What else has he been in? Is it just someone I'll know if I look up?
He's one of those people that like
John Larroquette.
He is from.
He's from Chuck.
Yeah.
He's in Chuck.
Famously from Chuck.
And Boston Legal, I think.
Oh, he's in Beethoven's Fifth as well. I think that's where we know him from.
That'll be where I know him from.
He's the mayor. Yeah. It's funny because he returned to do the VO for the intro for the remake. And it's like, even though he became a distinguished actor in that time, he happily returned to do it. And it's like, distinguished actor. All right, what was he up to that year? He did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre the same year he did Beethoven's Fifth. He's like, sorry, I'm making that Beethoven's Fifth money. I can't.
Yeah.
Would you do it for a marijuana cigarette?
Would I do it?
Yeah.
No, I'd probably do it for free though. But I don't smoke marijuana. How would I do it? Do you want me to just read the text? It's how I would do it.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't even find it.
No. All right. Okay, so this is a weird thing from. It's not dumb IMDb trivia, but it not quite. But I'm interested to see what you make of it. So it says, surprisingly, this film is one of the least bloody horror films of all time. This is because Tobe Hooper intended to make the movie for a PG rating, keeping violence moderate, language mild, and having most of the horror implied off-screen rather than shown in great detail on-screen. However, this plan actually backfired and made the film even more horrifying because despite cutting and repeated submissions, the ratings board insisted on an X rating, and it wasn't until the film received the R rating when Hooper gave up and released it. Would you say it's one of the least bloody horror films of all time? Because one of the characters is covered in blood for the third act of the film.
Yeah, no, it is pretty bloody, but I also understand it's like the Jaws revelation.
I don't know that yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
but maybe I'll find out soon.
They hid the shark in Jaws so that
Yeah,
it's not as scary. Well, so because it looked shit and it made it more scary. So I think that is part of this, is that it is
the what you're creating in your head is scarier.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck, I imagined some X-rated shit up here. So they gave it that rating.
Yeah.
All right. And for some dumb IMDb trivia, this is just what I said about the like 36-hour day of shooting with the rotting food and stuff. That's in the IMDb trivia like 3 times. And one of them just starts with the line, and then came the worst part of all with the climactic dinner scene.
And then it was the worst part that happened.
All right. So unless you have anything else to say about the first film, we can move along.
Well, what did you think of? Did you like this one?
Yeah, I did. It's one that, it's really interesting watching these films, like watching franchises like this, because you watch the first one and you like mentally put it as like a 5 in your head out of 10. And then the other films come out, and you're like, "Oh, actually, that was like an 8 or a 9." Yeah, you start this film assuming it's the neutral benchmark. Well, I do anyway. And then the other films, really kind of shape that. But yeah, like looking back on it as the 2 weeks have gone by, I look back on it and think, oh yeah, it was actually pretty cool. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 came out 12 years later. And I think as we get through it, as we get through this franchise, we'll start to see it like pioneering a few things that we've come to expect from these kind of franchises. Although I'm pretty sure every release went to cinemas, which actually it's not. No, Hellraiser is the only one that got like heaps of directed video ones.
Yeah.
But anyway, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, 1986. It was also directed by Tobe Hooper. And what's this one about?
So this one is set, I think it's set 14 years later. I think they said that at some point, and it's about...
Yeah, so it came out 12 years later. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not set in 1972, it's set in 1973 or 2. Sorry, it's not set in 1974 when the movie came out, it's set like 1 or 2 years earlier.
Right. And it's about the father of the... siblings from the first film, one of which was Sally, the main character, who's the only one who survives, but she's now like institutionalized, and he's a police officer, and when a string of very similar murders start happening, chainsaw related murders start happening in Texas, he goes on down there and teams up with like a spicy young radio DJ and
called Stretch.
Stretch, her name's Stretch, like Casper the Friendly Ghost's cousin. Did you know that? Did I?
No, sorry, I was adjusting my microphone, so I thought it best not to laugh, because you'd have to cut it out anyway. And then I was like, you know what? Doesn't deserve that. Once I had the time to think about it.
Well, that's always a good indication. That's how you know something's truly not funny. Is after you've thought about it, you still don't want to laugh. And so they kind of team up to try and find, a lot more happens in this one than in the first one. There's a lot more to grab onto. It offers up a lot more plot. But it ends with Stretch being stuck in like the underground lair of where the Sawyers live. That's Leatherface's family, right? Sawyer. And she eventually escapes, and the police officer turns up and starts running amok, and it ends with her having defeated all of them more or less, and she does a move reminiscent to the end of the first film where she's like got the chainsaw now and she dances around with it, and it ends there.
And Leatherface like kind of falls in love with her, and that's the whole thing.
That's true. It's
very
very different movie to the first one.
Yeah, it focuses a lot more on the comedy. which is Toby Hooper made a deliberate decision to do that because he believed that the first one is quite comedic, but people don't talk about it, so he went and made the second one a lot more comedic. And it's got one of the strangest posters of a film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's the Sawyer family of Leatherface and his cannibal mates doing the pose from the group pose from The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, it's a recreation of the Breakfast Club poster. And I had heard before I watched this, and what I was telling people is I'm pretty sure that the second film is like a parody of the first film.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd say that now after watching it.
Yeah, I didn't even think it
film.
was like particularly comedic. It's just weird,
Yeah. But I didn't dislike it. I actually enjoyed a lot of it.
Yeah.
As I said, there's a lot more. It offers up a lot more to you than the first one does. But
yeah.
I do.
But I don't think
the
that's
first one.
necessarily entirely a good thing, though. I would say.
No, that's true. It's good for a podcast, though.
Yeah. All right, moving along. So, what do you reckon this has on Rotty Tees then?
I've got no idea what this would have on old 10 toes. Apostrophe 10, apostrophe toes.
Yeah, what would you guess?
It could go either way. People could either love this or hate this. I have no idea. I'm gonna just go 54.
48.
Right, okay, so people didn't like it.
Yeah, 44 for audience as well, so it's not even like a hidden gem. If anything, the critics liked it more. In fact, Dennis Hopper, star of this film, would call this the worst movie he's ever been in.
Yeah.
Years later, he would say the same thing about Super Mario Bros.
I wonder which is the worst movie objectively.
Yeah.
I bet it's Super Mario Bros.
Yeah. So this franchise was suggested on our Patreon. And the person who suggested it mentioned as well that this film was banned in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it was. Well, Wikipedia explicitly says that it was banned in Australia and then mentions that illegal copies were available in New Zealand. So I assume the Australian ban also includes New Zealand. But yeah, so it was banned for 20 years. There was illegal VHS flying around, so there were ways to watch it, and some made their way to shelves and stuff like that.
There was just a single VHS floating around New Zealand.
But it was passed for official release in 2006. But it's crazy. Like, there's worse films, like in terms of content. That
I feel like the first one's probably worse.
Yeah, exactly.
This one in terms of content. Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, we mentioned Stretch, the radio host. So that's played by a woman called Caroline Williams, and she said she revealed in an interview that she considers the character Stretch to have appeared in 2 further films, only one of which is part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. So there's an uncredited role in the third film, a TV reporter, played by Caroline Williams, and apparently the director Jeff Burr of the next film told her, "Look, I don't know how long these chainsaw films will carry on, but I want to keep your character alive. I don't want to get rid of you. You're not mentioned anywhere in the screenplay, but I want to make sure that for the ages, if anybody wants to revisit Stretch, it has to be you. You will be seen in part 3. The fans will know it's you."
I didn't.
Yeah.
But am I a fan?
No. If you didn't, then you're not.
Is this Word of God canon, Richard?
Yeah, it is. But I think it's just worth...
Yeah.
I don't know. I can stop saying it. Like...
No. That's not what I meant. I'm more saying is that do you consider this true or just shitty, non-textual?
I think
content?
the third part, like her appearance in part 3, is like if it's the character doesn't have a name, she's not credited in it. There's no reason to believe it's not her,
Yeah.
But then in Hatchet 3, 2013, Williams plays the news reporter Amanda Palmer and she says that BJ McDonnell, the director, told me she's Stretch, that's what we're doing here. I played the character of Amanda precisely as she would be. Stretch grew up, she changed her name. She married a law enforcement guy played by Zach Galligan, and she split from him because she's a woman who is obsessed with pursuing these legends, these myths, which in her mind are not myths. And then...
she didn't have to change her name. I'm assuming her real name isn't Stretch.
Her name is Vanita Brock. Vanita Stretch Brock.
Okay.
So she also appeared in Sharknado 4: The Fourth Awakens as a character called Stretch, but she doesn't include this in her description of Vanita Brock's other movie appearances. But she did also play a doctor in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Oh. She sounds cool. What's she up to these days?
She died.
No.
Nah, she didn't.
Okay. Oh my god, you gave me a heart attack, Richard.
She is still alive. She's 62, and she was in Sabrina the Teenage Witch 22 years ago.
Right. Was that the last thing she did? No, she did
No.
Sharknado 4.
Yeah, she's in an upcoming documentary film supposed to come out this year called In Search of Darkness, which explores the development and lasting impact of the horror film genre during the 1980s and features interviews with numerous horror icons, both from that decade and the modern era, along with popular horror influences, like
Cool.
Instagram influences. So that'd be cool.
Yeah.
It's receiving an exclusive release to its Indiegogo backers in 2019.
Excellent. Well,
Well, we'll
We're
be
not
looking
one
out
of
for that. Oh, yeah, do you remember the character of Chop Top in this film?
no.
So there's like the skinny dude, he had like a metal plate in his head.
I just assumed that was the hitchhiker.
It's actually the Hitchhiker's brother he's playing.
Ah, okay.
So there was actually a sequel to this film planned, starring Bill Moseley as Chop Top, which was going to be a short film directed by Toby Hooper's son, but it never happened. Although a teaser trailer did leak online in the early 2000s, so they had filmed part of it at least. But it was going to be called All American Massacre.
Interesting. I love it.
What do you think of that title?
It's a good title. I like it. And that's an interesting way to take sequel titles to the series. Can I talk about the last maybe 30 minutes of this film, of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2? Because as I said before,
it's going to take 30 minutes?
Yeah, it'll take 45 minutes. Shut up.
Jesus.
It as I said before, it's stretched in their underground hiding place, and they get the father from the first film, Sawyer, the Daddy Sawyer, back to
Daddy.
He reprises his role, and he has a more substantial role in this one, where it's revealed that he is the best cooker of chili in his town, and it's because his chili has human meat in it. Anyway, it's her trying to escape, and she's walking around what is a very intricate underground lair, by the way, very, very full on. And for oh my god, for the whole time, it's this old guy yelling at Sawyer and at Leatherface and Chop Top. And he's just got the most grating voice. And it was such a stressful, final ride to watch, because it's just him going, "No, you idiot, what are you doing? You can't do that. You're never listening to me. You're always da-da-da." It's that nonstop, and I was like, oh my god, this is scarier than the first one, just because it's so it just felt so horrible to be sitting through the whole time.
Do you know what wasn't horrible to sit through?
Tell me.
Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 from 1990. Or was it horrible to sit through? Let's find out. So this is directed by Jeff Burr. What's it about?
It is about a couple that are driving through Texas, and through a bad tip on which shortcut they should take to get to where they wanted to get to, they end up coming in contact with Leatherface and the whole Sawyer family, and there's a couple of other characters that kind of turn up unceremoniously and become main characters.
Who plays one of them?
I don't know.
Viggo Mortensen.
Oh, yeah. Wait, I'm thinking of the wrong one. I'm thinking of... What one am I thinking of? No, I'm thinking of the right one. Yeah, Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah, it was real funny. I was going through these films and I was reading the thing and I was like, what one is this? What happens in this? And I had to and so I was like, what? Oh, I actually cannot remember it. So I went back and looked at the photo I took and I was like, oh, it's the Viggo Mortensen one. And that's all I remember about it.
Yeah, it's so this makes this our I think third franchise in which Viggo Mortensen either appears or was going to appear. No, our fourth one, because he was in Lord of the Rings and he was gonna be in. He was in talks to play Mikhail Blomkvist in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo American remake, and I think he was in talks to play someone in the MCU.
Doctor
at
Strange.
Some point, so, yeah.
Well, he was also approached to be in The Hobbit.
Oh,
But
that's
said,
true. So our fifth.
That said, I don't want to be in it because Aragorn's not in the book.
Yep, that's a very good point. Yeah, so it's the couple. The most interesting thing about this film is that the couple who you sort of start the film with have actually broken up, and they're like, because she's moving across country and he's driving with her, and so they had this really interesting dynamic at the start, where it was like this kind of bitter.
Bitter. They're just bitter.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I've never seen a movie open on that with that kind of dynamic before, and I thought it was cool. And then so Viggo Mortensen tells them to go down this one shortcut, and they do, and they end up running into Leatherface, and eventually the guy gets conked out by the chainsaw, as does a couple of the other people they've run into along the way, except for one guy who's what does he do? The other guy. The other main character in the film. He's like a truck driver, and so he finds out what's going on. And while the girl and the guy are being taken back to the Sawyer's household, where for some reason there's a whole different family now. I didn't quite understand. I said to you earlier that early in the week that the continuity in this film seems really like all over the place, and you're like, well, it's actually quite interesting. So,
I didn't realize you meant this film.
Well, he's just got an extended family, I guess.
Yeah. The family just gets bigger and bigger each film.
Yeah. And they kill the guy, and the girl is about to get killed, but then the truck driver attacks and frees her, and they escape together. And as they drive away safely through Texas, you see Leatherface walk into shot. It's like, oh my god, he's still alive.
So Nightmare on Elm Street was doing really well, and so New Line bought the rights to this to Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the hopes of turning it into a similar kind of franchise, milking it dry essentially. But it this didn't do very well, so that was the only film that New Line made apparently. But yeah, this film has a real cool teaser trailer. It's like an idyllic sort of lakeside thing, and you see like a sort of a silhouette of a man standing by the lake, and it's got this voiceover about it's like some romantic thing, and then out from the water, like this chainsaw like rises out of the water and flies over, and he like grabs it and like turns around and slices the camera. But in that trailer, fun fact, Leatherface is played by Kane Hodder, who you might remember is considered the iconic Jason. He's a stuntman. So he played Jason Voorhees, but he also, in a like fun little scene that they made for a con, because there's the plot hole, I guess, in the first Halloween, or the first or second Halloween of like Michael Myers knows how to drive, and it's like, how would he have learned how to drive? Where Kane Hodder plays Michael Myers at a driving school. Learning how to drive, like all in the mask and everything, but then also in the final shot of Jason Goes to Hell, the Freddy Krueger gloved hand that comes out of the ground and grabs Jason's mask was Kane Hodder's hand, so he's played Leatherface, Michael Myers, Jason, and Freddy.
Very awesome. That's so cool. Nice.
So, director Jeff Burr was fired from production.
Oh my god.
But no one else would take the job, so he was rehired.
The old James Gunn approach.
Yeah, but apparently at one point, New Line's first choice for the director was Peter Jackson.
He nearly directed a Hellraiser.
Yeah, the fourth one.
Yeah.
It's funny watching films like this where there's one actor that we know goes on to be real good.
Yeah, like Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah. Did you think anything of his performance, particularly in this film?
I'm always fascinated by watching Viggo Mortensen act, because he's such an enigma in real life. He seems like he takes himself very seriously, but he's also clearly got a really good sense of humor. Yeah,
he's very soft spoken and
yeah. So and it was cool to see him be kind of like wild and psychopathic in this one, which I really liked.
Yeah.
He gets burnt alive.
Yeah.
And so they kill him.
Yeah. This film, speaking of like, gross shit like that, it was received an X rating, and this was the final film to receive an X rating before the MPAA changed it to NC-17. But then it was later trimmed down to be R-rated. So this is one of the classic film franchise Fortnights, midway through a big franchise films where there's not really much interesting to say. Don't really remember it.
What does it have on Rotten Tomatoes?
19%. 32%
Interesting.
audience score.
I've got a confession to make, Richard.
You didn't watch it?
No. Can you imagine? No, I did. I didn't hate any of these films.
Yeah, that's I want to talk about the franchise as a whole and how it compares to other franchises as a whole.
And so I wanted to just drop that there with its shocking 19% audience critic score and be like, okay, I actually kind of enjoyed this one and had an all right time with it.
Yeah, I mean, I like I say, I don't particularly, it didn't stick with me in any way, but I don't.
Well, it's just, it's the same as the first one. It's the same structure. It's the same, the deaths are slightly different, but it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
But it was cool. I liked it.
But it would be followed up a few years later with Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, also known some places as The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's a strange way to put it.
Yeah,
like a massacre returning.
Yeah. So this is directed by Kim Henkel, who is a man. Before you get excited that a female directed it. No, they didn't. What's this one about?
So this one's set on a prom night, and a bunch of teenagers who are angry at each other seemingly are driving home, but somehow end up in the backwoods where they are accosted by the Sawyers, including one Matthew McConaughey.
Ooh. And who's one of the girls?
Renee Zellweger, who I didn't realize it was her until 3/4 of the way through the film, because Renee Zellweger is like the most famous actress I don't immediately recognize, I think. This has happened, I think, before with her, is that she just looks so different at different points in her life that I didn't actually realize it was her.
Yeah, it's like, because she's one person that I like immediately. If you ask me to like picture Renee Zellweger, I think of Bridget Jones, where she like looks a little bit different from what she normally looks like.
Yeah,
and she's also got a British accent.
Yeah, exactly. She's a good actress, that means. I've decided. That's what that means.
Okay. Being in Bridget Jones's Diary makes you a good actress.
Yeah. So it's essentially the same thing, but this is a lot weirder. This is a lot weirder of a movie. It goes on, it drags things on a lot longer, and it's, Well, I don't know. It was all right. I probably liked it as much as I liked the last two.
Yeah, it's another film where no one gets massacred by a chainsaw.
I kind of like that, though. Is there any creative choice trivia that you know about this? Why it's called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but barely the chainsaws barely come into it?
I mean, because it's the sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
But even in the first one, there's barely any chainsawing in it. It's cool.
Know,
it's like it feels like it's
I can give
like
you some alternate titles of what the first one was originally called.
Okay.
where am I? Sorry. Stalking Leatherface and Head Cheese were two working titles.
I don't like Head Cheese.
Yeah, fuck that, eh?
You wouldn't be a famous franchise if it was like that. No, I kind of like it. It feels like it's what the newspaper would call it to get more people reading their stories, even though like.
I think that's the idea, because it's the first film is like, this is a report of the Texas Chainsaw, what was later dubbed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. So one thing that I really liked about Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation is that it starts with the main characters. So there's 4 main characters. There's a couple and another guy and another girl, who I don't think they are together. And I think it's quite heavily implied that Renee Zellweger's character is a lesbian. I think that's implied.
Yeah, she doesn't have sex with her boyfriend. That's like a big thing.
Yeah, but well, no, is that her or is that the other character? I think that's different. Because
No,
what
yeah,
I was,
you're right. Yeah, you're right.
what I was gonna, it's that this is the one where the other guy's like, everybody knows what you're like, basically, to her. But anyway, so there's another, the couple are in a tiff because she catches him kissing another girl, and she like jumps into the car that they've borrowed from his dad, and he jumps in with her, and then Renee Zellweger and this other guy are in the back seat. But then there's a scene where the guy who's just been caught kissing another girl has a bunch of stuff he says that's along the lines of like, oh, if you don't have sex with a guy, it's bad for his prostate. He could get prostate cancer. And then the three other people in the car just rip him out mercilessly for like 5 minutes. And I was like, this is great. This is a great scene. They're like, you're only saying that so you could get laid. You're such a fucking loser. And they just shit on him for ages.
Yeah.
And it's real funny.
Yeah, I hate the whole that whole argument. It's so stupid.
What?
Like, oh, this whole if you don't have sex with with a guy, it's actually like real painful and like.
Of course, I hate it too. It's not
so
true. It's stupid, but it's so funny to see.
Like the fact that there are people that actually think that your balls will go blue and like swell up.
The Texas Blue Ball Massacre. Yeah, I just thought it was so funny to see. Because when did this movie come out?
1994.
1994. And it's a pretty I don't know, woke scene almost. That it's like taking a character who's trying to, manipulate his girlfriend to have sex with him, and just no one takes him seriously.
Yeah,
it's so funny, man.
So this is the kind of film that you think it's stars who would later become, quite big deals in Hollywood. Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. They actually both like sort of had their big star making roles 2 years later in '96 with A Time to Kill and Jerry Maguire. And so Sony owned this film's distribution rights. They were going to do a big re-release of the film, highlighting that it had these two actors in it. However, they shared an agent, and they threatened a lawsuit against the studio, claiming their clients were being unfairly exploited. The agency also said that if Sony released the film on the back of their names, that that neither actor would appear in any future Sony releases. Plans for the release were quickly abandoned.
Well, I've seen a poster for the film that says Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger on the top of it.
Yeah, I mean, of course it does. But so when asked about the film, Renee Zellweger said it was dangerous. I don't know if any of it was legal. It was a great workout. Running from a guy with a live chainsaw is an excellent motivation. It was a lot of fun. It was my first role, really. I couldn't believe that somebody was going to trust me with that somebody was going to take this chance on me. I was really grateful. I have no shame about that movie.
Oh, good on her. She's really good at it.
Yeah.
I thought both her and McConaughey were really good.
Yeah, she also goes on to say, it was very low budget. We all shared a tiny Winnebago that the producer of the film, it belonged to him. It was his personal camper. So, makeup was in the front seats, and there was a table in the middle for hair, and there was a tiny little curtain by the bathroom. That was where you put your prom dress and your flower on. It was ridiculous. How we pulled that off, I have no idea. I'm sure none of it was legal. Anything we did was a little bit dangerous, but what an experience. It was kamikaze filmmaking.
Yeah, it sounds like this would have been a fun one to make, and because it's the only one that's like not really in the desert as well.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as hot.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and because I think because Matthew McConaughey is such an interesting actor, because he's giving it his all in this film.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very manic, and
he's as good in this as he is in Dallas Buyers Club or True Detective.
Yeah, but because I think. Because the whole thing of like Matthew McConaughey being a terrible actor for like years, it seems like he just got complacent. He just got lazy. I mean,
yeah,
you look something who looks like Fool's Gold. He's still charismatic, but he's just not really trying. But then when you see even a movie like this, he's like fucking giving it his all.
Yeah, he's really good in it.
Yeah, and he says his famous catchphrase as well.
He says "all right, all right, all right" in it, which is a thing I like. I thought he only said that in Dazed and Confused. And it's like just a thing that it's like.
No, he also says it in Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation.
He does. Yeah. So, what did we talk about Rotten Tomatoes for this one?
What would you think it has?
So, if the last one had 18, I'm going to guess this one's maybe slightly more highly regarded. I'm going to say 25.
14.
Okay.
And 18 with audiences.
Again, didn't hate it. It was fine.
Right. Well, we're going to do something a little bit strange for the next thing. I haven't done this
don't
before.
like
I'm
this.
just going to do it on the fly. Because the next film was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003, which is part of that wave of horror reboots we got. That was directed by Marcus Nispel. But then we also got 3 years later the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning. Now, these two films kind of mesh together a little bit for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can quite easily just talk about these two together.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
With
So
you.
so the beginning's the prequel too.
Yeah.
And what was very reminiscent of the 2 Halloween remakes as well,
yeah.
like the Rob Zombie Halloween films. This feels like it's on that same energy as
where
that
it's
kind of
like
thing.
a remake and then just a straight up remake and then being able to do something a bit different with it.
Yeah, a sequel or prequel that takes its own liberties and does its own thing. Although I feel like Halloween 2 is the more impressive instance.
Yeah, for sure. So nothing too. What would you say is different? What's worth pointing out that's different about the remake?
It's a lot cleaner. It's filmed
Stars
a
Jessica
lot cleaner.
Biel.
Stars
It's
Jessica
actually
Biel.
filmed a lot cleaner. It's actually the same DOP as the original.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, apparently the director was hesitant to do it, and he was talking to the DOP about how it was like sacrilegious to remake. But I mean, eventually, I guess he got over it.
It was sacrilegious to remake.
Like, shouldn't
it's not
have
a very
done
good remake. It's also got R. Lee Emery in it, the guy from Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, and he's the kind of connecting thread between this and the prequel.
Yeah. And their last name is Hewitt in this one instead of Sawyer, I think. Is it Hewitt?
Yeah.
It's more or less the same. It's not the same script, but it's the same ideas, and it's still set in 1973, but it kind of just feels like it's set in modern day.
Yeah.
I think I'd seen this one before. I think this and the original. I think I saw this when I was a lot younger, because I remember the scene of him running through the white sheets on the clothesline. Running away from Leatherface. And I remember the shot of... So they pick up a hitchhiker at the start, and in the original they pick up a hitchhiker and it's one of the Sawyers and he freaks them out and then jumps ship. But in this one, they pick up a hitchhiker who is like a victim who has run away from the Hewitts, and when she sees that they're going back to where she'd been running away from, she pulls out a gun and shoots herself in the head. And I just remember the shot of the camera zooming back as they're all watching in horror, and it zooms out the bullet hole in her head, like zooms through her head, which is an all right shot. What did I like about this film?
Jessica Biel.
Jessica Biel's good. She's great in it. I don't know. It's like... It's very long. I felt like... I'm sure it wasn't literally longer, but it felt
it's like
long,
90
right?
minutes.
I wanted to stop watching this one for a lot earlier than I felt with the last ones. But yeah, it's a remake, dude. It's a 2003 horror movie remake, of which there were plenty.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the prequel about?
It's about... It's not even really the origins of the character. It's just... what happens next. Like it's a prequel ostensibly because they need to bring back a character who died in the first one, which is R. Lee Emery, who plays like the dad. And shit, man, what is it about? He just kidnaps another group of people.
I had seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning before. I watched it at a sleepover, and one image that always stuck with me, and it's still, I think about it all the time, is Ali Emery. Was it Ermy or Emery? I don't know. Ermy. Wraps like saran wrap, glad wrap, plastic wrap around someone's head until they sort of pass out. And then they're like, everyone's like, oh, like, let him go. And he like shoves a knife in his mouth. And I remember that like so visceral, like so distinctly, just imagining like there's no good way for a knife to be shoved into your mouth, you know? Like, so if it goes back far enough, if it doesn't enter your tongue, or go under. If it goes under your tongue, fuck that. If it goes into your tongue, fuck that. And then if it like scrapes the roof of your mouth, like fuck that. But so the guy like gets stabbed in the mouth and then spits out blood. And I remember him not being able to talk after that or dying, but he's just fine.
Yeah,
it's a minor inconvenience to be stabbed in the mouth for him. But it was funny because I watched this film. I like started watching it in the morning and then had to go to work and finished it when I got home. But I like when I was like, oh, okay, I need to go catch the bus. I was like, just that scene happened, and I was like, okay, I'll turn it off. And then I was like, I scrolled to a random point in the film to pick it up again, and it was literally like, all right, here, stab, like the exact second. I was like, oh god.
That's funny. If this film ends with all the characters dying, I think it might be the first one that ends that way. Because the main character, in terms of canon, shouldn't be able to get away if nobody knows about the family.
They should have made one of them be the hitchhiker that gets away.
Yeah, I thought that was going to happen. And
blows their brains out, like a very The Thing-esque.
Yeah.
But so John Larroquette does the narration again. This is one he said he was quite happy to return and do, even though he was busy with Beethoven's Fifth. So this is the only time we up to this point that we actually see in the 2003 one is we see Leatherface's real face. There was supposed to be an unmasking scene in the third film, but it was held back to keep an R rating and was used in this film when people are more open to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Dolph Lundgren turned down Leatherface.
Oh,
imagine that.
Biggest disappointment of his career.
Yeah. So this is the first film by the studio Platinum Dunes, which is Michael Bay's production company. The wave of Michael Bay horror remakes. So there's also like Amityville Horror, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Out of the Shadows. All horror franchises that
all terrifying movies in very different ways. Yeah, man, I don't know. I probably liked these two the least. These might be the only two out of the 8 that I would be like, I didn't like these.
Interesting.
I found something to enjoy in the others.
This is looking at like I was just browsing random Reddit threads about like horror and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and a lot of people say this is awful and affront to the franchise. It's not the one that gets the most flack, but a lot of people are like, yeah, these ones are actually pretty decent. Like, I like what they did with them.
They're just the vanilla horror mid-2000s remake.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they're exactly what you're imagining when, like, everything's cleaner, shot better. Not better, but shot more professional, almost.
Yeah.
And there's, like, a green tint to the color grade, and...
Yeah. It's artificial grime, whereas the first one is real grime.
The first one feels like it's shot on a DV camera. Yeah.
So this is I've got some dumb IMDb trivia, and then I've got some like fun or just weird IMDb trivia. So this is actually for Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. So Jordana Brewster, who's in this film, who's also in Fast and Furious.
Mia?
Huh?
Yeah, she's Mia. Mia Toretto.
Yeah. She initially got made fun of for the way she ran during filming scenes in which her character Chrissy had to run. Jordana said she's used to running on a treadmill in Form. Producer Andrew Form, no relation to the word... to being informed.
No relation to her technique for running on a treadmill.
Told her that she looked like she was running in the Chariots of Fire, and they told her to run messy with her arms up in the air and to not go on a straight line. Jordana said she ended up running faster than the camera operators could go, and was like, well, how's that, with a laugh. That's exactly how it was written. But Jordana... Andrew Form's negging of Jordana Brewster worked, and they started dating on this film in secret because it would be unprofessional. So they would sneak off to their trailers together, and now they're married. Been happily married for a few years. But here's some dumb IMDb trivia. Jordana Brewster's initials are JB, just like Jessica Biel, who was the female lead in the 2003 remake, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 3 years before this one.
That's so stupid. There are plenty of JBs in Hollywood.
Yeah. Jacob Bromlin.
Oh my God, they're the only JBs in Hollywood.
Also, if you're wondering
Josh
why
Brolin, he's not in these.
Justin
It
Bieber?
feels like he should be in one of the earlier ones, though, doesn't it?
Also, if you're wondering, like we mentioned about how it's a prequel just to keep Ali Umi around. Apparently, they didn't want to do a sequel, but then they kept on getting asked questions about it, and they were like, "Oh, maybe we should make a movie that answers all these questions, like about how he lost his teeth and all this stupid shit."
Like, yeah, it is a movie where it's like, remember the character who didn't have legs in the first film? Here's how he lost his legs. It's classic prequeling.
Yeah. So there were plans for a third film, but it was canned.
What were the Rotten Tomato scores for these two?
So, yeah, thank you for asking. I keep forgetting to do this. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake was 37%, 58% for audiences. And the prequel was 13%, 53% for audiences. So audiences, about the same on both films, but
lukewarm responses on both films.
But yeah, so moving on to the film I've been waiting to talk about, Texas Chainsaw 3D, 2013. This was directed by John Lusenhop.
Lusenhop.
Yeah. Luessenhop. All right. So, what's this one about?
This one is about a woman who is, I don't know if they're trying to hide it in the beginning, but she's clearly the daughter of someone in the Sawyer family.
She's related to the Sawyer family.
But she was taken at, but she's like, taken at birth by a
couple of hillbillies. But the interesting thing about this film is it's one of the first films to do the now common trend of making a sequel to the original that ignores all of the other sequels.
Yeah, it's true.
So this is great. So it's set in 2012, which is, according to the film's timeline, is 26 years after 1973.
I was going to ask about that because Alexander Daddario plays the main character, who I don't think is old enough to be the main character.
So they explicitly show footage from the original and say this happened in this timeline as you know it. And then Alexander Daddario's character was born, and then however old her character is years later, it's now 2012. So she's about 26. But it's explicitly shown in the film that the current year is 2012, and they try and hide it, but it's still explicitly shown that the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre took place in 1973, because there's a bit where she's at a police station and she's reading about the massacre, and they frame it so you just see August 19th, 19, and don't see the year. And then she turns the page, and at the top of the page, very obvious is the numbers 1973, but the camera's not focusing on them, so it thinks you won't notice them. But yeah, it's one of the, like, she's clearly not 39.
Yeah.
But it's very fun. It's very strange, but
So the film basically tells you that after the events of the first film, a bunch of people from the town showed up and burnt down the Sawyer residence, killing almost everyone, and including the mother of a baby, and that baby is now our main character, who finds out she's adopted when her great aunt dies, and she inherits this house in Texas. So her and her boyfriend, her and her boyfriend and her best friend and her new boyfriend travel all the way over to Texas to check out this house, where they pick up a hitchhiker, and then turns out Leatherface is still hiding in this house, and he attacks everyone, kills everyone, and except for Alexander Daddario eventually. Well, actually, what's the other girl's name?
Tanya Raymond. Yeah,
she gets kidnapped by Leatherface and then shot by a cop who gets a fright when he finds her body. Well, finds her alive when they're investigating the house. And then it ends with one of the guys who was one of the original team of people who burnt down the house going after Leatherface, and Alexander Daddario and Leatherface team up, because he
They're
finds out
cousins,
that they're cousins, and they team up to defeat the dastardly guy who they put him through like what is that?
Mincemeat thing.
Yeah, like a mincemeater thing, and kill him, and then Alexander Daddario and Leatherface now live together in this house
in perfect harmony, and she just takes care of him. But there's the iconic line from this film where she throws Leatherface his chainsaw, and what does she say?
She says, "What's the first
Do
part?
your thing, cuz.
Do your thing, cuz. Do your thing, honey."
And it's so good, man. This is
Oh my
god. I loved this film, man. I fucking loved this film. This was the film I'd been waiting for. Like, this is sacrilege to say. Like, you go on like the horror subreddits and stuff like that, and there's a lot of apologists for like the Friday the 13th remake. There's a lot for Halloween, the Rob Zombie one. People say, like, good they do his own thing.
I really like Halloween too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people praising certain elements of Nightmare on Elm Street. But you would be hard pressed to find someone who likes Texas Chainsaw 3D, but or it's sacrilege to say that it's good. But man, I had a blast with this film.
It's fun.
Like, this is fine. Like, I understand a franchise not wanting to go silly, but I'm so glad this one did. And I think it was like it got halfway through, and I was like, wait a minute. I'm gonna think this is. I made a conscious decision to start finding the film funny, and then I loved it. It was when she runs out of the house screaming, and then falls down the stairs, and then gets up and trips over again.
Yeah, it's so clumsy. You gotta find it funny, otherwise you're not gonna enjoy it.
But so this film, I'm sorry to go to this place, AJ, but holy shit, man! Alexander Daddario and Tanya Raymond are very attractive.
Okay.
It's like,
where are we going from here, though? This is my question. How long do we talk about this for?
Like, it's distracting.
Yeah, okay, but,
Alexander Daddario has a rule against appearing nude in films, but she'll only do a nude scene for TV if she's paid well, apparently. But there's a scene in this film where she is, like, sort of tied up spread eagle, and her shirt gets ripped open. She offered to do that completely topless, but the filmmakers thought that it would be gratuitous. It says, and this is according to IMDb, her character is shown to be braless, and despite previous assertions, has been braless since she changed clothes at the police station, which is obvious in other scenes as well. But it's funny because she's very well endowed, and her shirt gets ripped open, and she's kind of like flailing everywhere, and you can very clearly see that her shirt has been taped to her breasts.
I find that very interesting that she would say that she doesn't do nude scenes, but then offer to go shirtless in Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Yeah, what I think it was is that because, like, you can see, like, part of the fabric being stuck down kind of thing when she's, like, flailing from left to right, but I think it's probably more of like you don't like she wouldn't have like, take my shirt completely off. It was more that she was fine if the shirt didn't completely contain her breasts.
Right.
That's what I would imagine. I mean, maybe she was like, yeah, fucking just rip the whole shirt off, and I'll do the whole rest of the scene topless.
I'll do this whole movie naked.
But yeah, and Tanya Raymond, it's funny seeing her in this kind of role because I grew up with her in Malcolm in the Middle, and then in Lost, and then seeing her in like this hyper-sexualized role.
Yeah.
Is like, like a childhood crush, like finally seeing it like that. It's like, Jesus.
So I had issues with her character, and again, I could just be like, this is a dumb movie, so why talk about it with such a critical eye? But I don't know,
because
this is this podcast.
Is.
Yeah. At the start, it seems like they're pretty good friends, and then about at the end of maybe the second act of the film, it's revealed that she's like going after Alexander Daddario's boyfriend, and they end up having a liaison together that we don't see a lot of, and Alexander Daddario doesn't get to ask them about it because they both get killed before they are able to, because she doesn't catch them, but they start getting attacked, and then she like pulls up the van. She's like, "Get in!" And they get in, and they're very clearly, well, the boyfriend is shirtless, and the girl is I can even remember her name. What's
Tanya.
Tanya. She's
I don't know. That's not their characters' names.
Yeah, she's got no pants on. And yeah, I was waiting for the moment, like in the thick of like driving away from Leatherface, where Alexander Daddario is just like, "Why aren't you wearing a shirt? Where are your pants?" But that didn't happen because they both get killed before she can talk to them again. But there is in my opinion, a precursor to "Do Your Thing, Cuz," and when Leatherface is trying to bust into the barn that Tanya and the boyfriend have shacked themselves up in, where Tanya has a shotgun and she shoots, and then she goes, "Welcome to Texas, bitch," or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's from you're the new person in Texas. It's such a strange thing. It's such a like attempt at a fuck yeah line, but it doesn't quite. it makes so little sense in terms of like who the characters are and where they are, and like she doesn't represent Texas. She's not the person who would be like, "Welcome to Texas." She's been there for a day. But I felt like the characters were so cardboard and flimsy, and part of it is that she's shown to be like a supportive friend and then immediately just tries to steal her best friend's boyfriend in it. But then that cardboard character also extends to Alexander Daddario, who's like within a day goes from fearing this terrifying being who has murdered her friends to like standing up for them. And I think this is a common thing I've noticed in all of the films, is occasionally in a couple of them they ask you to sympathize with Leatherface. Like the bad guys in Texas Chainsaw 3D are the guys that burnt down the Sawyer's home. And it's like, I kind of think they're better than the Sawyers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Well, at least I guess with Leatherface, I guess supposed to sympathize with him a little bit, that he's like just misunderstood, and he's just simple and kind of is a victim of his family.
I guess, but at the same time, like, I'm
not saying that that's what it is. I'm saying that that's what they're attempting,
Yeah, exactly. So very, very funny, very interesting film.
Yeah. There's a few fun little cameos in this.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard
Scott Eastwood?
So Richard Reel and Scott Eastwood just play characters in it. But Gunnar Hansen, the original Leatherface, plays Boss Sawyer, one of the Sawyer family. John Dugan, who was the one that complained about being the old man makeup, reprises his role as Grandpa from the original film.
No shit.
And also Verna Carson, the matriarch of the family, who's the one that at the end of the Sawyer family, who at the end writes a letter to Edith Rose Sawyer, Alexander Daddario's character, telling her who she is. That's Marilyn Burns, who played Sally Hardesty in the original film.
Ah, cool.
Yeah. Also, Bill Moseley replaces Jim Sido as Drayton Sawyer because he had passed away. Bill Moseley, of course, played Chop Top in the second film.
All in as incestuous casting as the characters are sexually.
So there was a plan for when this film came out. There was a plan originally for a trilogy of films. They would have been released out of chronological order, with the second film coming out first, being set almost entirely in a hospital. The next film would be a prequel explaining the events that led up to the hospital scenario. Then the third film would complete the storyline. Fearing it was too ambitious and risky, the producers opted for a follow-up to the original instead. And get this, in January 2013, it was revealed that due to the film's financial success, Millennium Films began a sequel film to be called Texas Chainsaw 4. Which was expected to begin filming later in 2013.
Hold on just a motherfucking second.
You hold on one motherfucking second. It was expected to begin filming later in 2013 in the state of Louisiana.
Now, it's Texas Chainsaw 4.
Yeah.
Presumably
so you
because
have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw 3D, Texas Chainsaw 4.
This is the worst instance of this happening. There's literally no Texas Chainsaw 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say Texas Chainsaw 3D is like...
Yeah, but it's not cool. It's not like when like a film is the third in a series and it's 3D, like Spy Kids. It's not like Spy Kids 3D.
Yeah.
It's just called 3D because that was the gimmick of it.
Yeah.
It's not the third film. Oh my god. That is shocking to me that would be the way they were going to go with it.
I remember, I think I made a note of it on my phone maybe, that the end of the credits call it something else. Let me just...
I think it was Massacre 3D. I think I saw that too.
It was just called Massacre 3D.
No, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D.
Well, make your mind up, dude.
I've made my mind up.
No animals were harmed? Yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D. And then there's a post-credit scene as well, which is a fun little scene where her adopted parents come to see her to get all her money, presumably, and then Leatherface answers the door. And it's like, oh, this isn't going to end well for you two.
I've got a funny feeling this ain't going to go.
So, finally, we're finally at the end
Rotten
of this.
Tomatoes?
Thank you very much. What would you guess?
Oh, God, like 10?
18. 41% for audiences. And finally, in 2017, we had a film called Leatherface. This was directed by Julian Maury and Alexandre Bustillo. So, what is this about?
This is the gritty origin story of how Leatherface came to be Leatherface. And it's... Look, man, this is an interesting movie. I thought this was very interesting. I wouldn't say it was great, but it would like had some. I liked the overall story. So it's about so at the start you see a young Jedediah Sawyer, who is Leatherface's real name, being forced to use a chainsaw on a thief by the rest of the family, and he doesn't want to do it. And then we skip ahead to a asylum where you meet a bunch of new characters and a nurse. And you find out that basically that they all have new names, and so they're not called what you'd expect them to be called.
Yeah.
Like they get new names when they get institutionalized. And there's a big hulking guy named Bud,
who looks exactly like Leatherface.
Yeah, and then there's the calm and collected Jackson,
Handsome Jackson,
who kind of like
who doesn't look anything like Leatherface.
No, and he strikes up a friendship with a nurse. And there's also another crazy dude who's not a good guy, and then his girlfriend who's
not a good guy.
Who's also not a good guy. Anyway, there's like an outbreak, and all those four
like
inmates.
kind of thing. Yep.
Inmates? What would you call them? Patients. Those 4 patients escape, and they take the nurse with them, and the bad guys are basically like, shotgun pushing them across country to escape, and they won't let the nurse go, while Jackson and Bud are like, and the nurse are like in it together, like, because Jackson isn't really shown to be he seems quite lucid the whole film.
Bud can't speak.
Yeah.
Much like another leather-faced character we know.
Yes, and it's basically them outrunning Stephen Dorff, who is the cop, and the second in a row True Detective star to be in these films, after Alexander Daddario, who is in True Detective Season 1.
Well, and Matthew McConaughey.
4th! Oh my god! Fourth? Yeah, 4th. No, 3rd.
What? Yeah, 3rd.
There's probably a 4th.
Matt Bomer?
Yeah, sure. Anyway, for a lot of this film, I respected it because it was doing something quite different. It was almost irrelevant that I was watching a Texas Chainsaw canon story, because it's just I quite like the idea of these crazy people and this hostage being like going on like a cross country. It's almost like a road movie, them trying to escape the police and stuff. And then like maybe just after halfway, the two villains of the film are disposed with. Like they're killed. One of them's killed by Bud, and one of them is killed by Stephen Dorff. And I was like, oh, okay. Kind of feels like all the tension goes with those 2 characters. And then the nurse spots a cop car and like waves her hand, and then the cop reacts badly and shoots Bud, who gets killed, and to leave Jackson and the nurse the
wait,
only
but I
surviving.
thought he was Leatherface.
Yeah, well, I did too, Richard.
Did you actually?
The fact that they weren't going by their actual names was like, okay.
Yeah, it's very obvious what they're going to do.
They're gonna pull some kind of trick here. So it's revealed that Jackson's actually Leatherface, and he goes back home to his family, where they kind of bring him back into his crazy mindset of who we know as Leatherface is after, because presumably been rehabilitated somewhat. And he kills Stephen Dorff and then chases the nurse and kills her as well, leaving it to be that he is now, fully transformed into the Leatherface we all know and hate. And yeah, so the whole twist that Bud isn't Leatherface, I feel like they shouldn't have done their names aren't what they came in with. We changed their names when they were institutionalized, because that's just asking for it. You know exactly what's going to happen. The Bud should have been the Jedediah you've seen at the start, and then they do like an Armin Tamzarian situation from The Simpsons, where Jackson dons assumes the identity of Jedediah because the parents haven't seen him since he was a little boy.
Yeah, or just call Bud Jed, and then turns out it's actually Jackson's name, and he was just calling him that.
Yeah, there was an easier way to deal with that, signposting it so ridiculously. So yeah, I liked a lot of this film. I didn't really like the ending. I didn't like where it went to.
I was so bummed out that the nurse died.
Same, dude.
I was like, because, oh man, she goes through some shit in this movie. And it was weird. I got so invested in her. And there's nothing particularly outstanding about the film or her or anything like that, but man, I got so bummed out. She gets decapitated
by a chainsaw.
I just wanted her to have a happy ending. She
deserved
nice.
It. Yeah, she's a nice lady. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'll be right.
What does this have on Rotten Tomatoes? I'm very interested in this.
Thank you for asking. 30%.
Yeah, interesting.
24
I feel
audiences.
What is odd about this film is that where Texas Chainsaw 3D feels like, let's dig up this old franchise and make some, assured money from it. This one feels like a bit more of a risk and a bit more of a creative project from someone. It feels like someone had an idea and then was contacted the Texas Chainsaw Massacre rights holders and was like, can I make this film?
Well, it was kind of the opposite of that.
Oh, cool.
This is you have to make a film to keep the rights. And they actually took too long to make the film, so they lost the rights.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So apparently, according to the screenwriter, this takes place in the canon established, which is just from the last film, which is, so it goes Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, and then Texas Chainsaw 3D is the current canon. And so this was made because they were like, you know what? Leatherface doesn't really have a backstory. And so let's give him one.
And it's classic.
Ignoring the fact that that's the appeal of the character.
Yeah, same thing happened with Halloween. Yeah. And I get that. It is kind of not that interesting to see how someone becomes, and I'd say that there was a time when gritty character backstories were all the rage, but Joker's coming out next week, and that's this thing again, so I don't know. I feel like there is a temptation to make films like this, whereas they almost never turn out. I mean, Joker's got
won the
really high praise, but yeah, I don't know. I think that it's because the same thing with Halloween, the Rob Zombie Halloween remake is once you forgive it for ruining the allure, you can watch it as its own thing. Yeah, because with Halloween, it was this is just a different approach. I don't actually have a problem with this.
Yeah. Well, so with that, let's move on to talking about the franchise as a whole and how it ranks amongst other ones. But just fun fact, throughout the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, Leatherface kills 76 people with a chainsaw.
Cool.
This is a fun little thing for you. So, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween all have the distinction of starting around the same time, having a iconic murderer villain guy, and
Mhm.
also getting a remake in the 2000s. So, how do you rank the original films, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I think I might actually put Texas Chainsaw Massacre first.
Interesting.
I thought it was creepy and dark and intelligent. It's a very intelligent film, which I didn't give it credit for when I first saw it. Like, I thought it was dumb and pointless. But that scene where they feed blood to a decrepit old man, I was like, yeah, as I said before, I was like, this is I did not remember this from when I watched it the first time. And then I'd probably go Halloween just because of its craftsmanship, John Carpenter. Because he's a carpenter. Then obviously Nightmare on Elm Street, and then obviously Friday the 13th, which I did not like the first one when we watched it all those years ago.
Yeah, interesting. Like, I think that Nightmare on Elm Street is probably the best original film.
Yep.
And then I would probably go Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th. However, I would say that I really liked the first three of those, and Friday the 13th is pretty not great.
I remember being disappointed by the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and I also think Nightmare on Elm Street in comparison to Texas Chainsaw Massacre or even Halloween it kind of feels juvenile, I guess.
I think that what I look for and what I like in these franchises is, I think the original. Just speaking of the original films, Nightmare on Elm Street has it. And it's the same reason I like Texas Chainsaw 3D. It's the same reason Jason Lives is the best Friday the 13th film. You know, it's that camp. It's not taking itself too seriously, but I guess it does need. I understand that maybe you could see that like it needs to take itself seriously originally to go like that.
Well, okay, I always prefer. Yeah, I always prefer genuine authenticity to subverting expectations. Like, subverting stuff is great, and I love meta stuff, as fans of cult pop should probably know. But if you can do something seriously, I think that has more clout and more prestige to it. So I don't know. But I haven't rewatched Nightmare on Elm Street since we covered it for this podcast, so maybe I need to revisit both that and Friday the 13th.
Yeah, all of them. Suggested on our Patreon. So, and then what about the remakes? Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Nightmare, Friday the 13th.
So the remakes specifically?
Yeah.
Are we counting the sequels to the remakes?
Now let's just go just the remake.
Just the original? They're all pretty much the same. I think.
They are, eh?
I don't know if I have a preference. Maybe Nightmare on Elm Street just has the least, in my mind, it has the least far to fall.
Interesting, because I would say that's easily the worst one.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember it probably well enough. Yeah, I don't know. I guess
it's a fool's errand.
If we were including Halloween 2 and Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
the
New Beginning, was it the New Beginning or just the beginning? The beginning. I would easily put Halloween first because I thought Halloween 2 was one of the best Halloween movies. So yeah, I don't know. What about Hellraiser? We haven't included that in this.
Yeah, because it doesn't have a remake.
True. But we didn't even include it in the first one. Which of these original?
Yeah, no, because it doesn't have a remake.
Okay.
So I'm not counting it as one of the it feels like these four are like buddies, whereas Hellraiser is not.
Hellraiser was the British version of these.
Yeah, exactly. These are four that you would put together.
Yeah.
And off the top of my head, I can't think of a fifth one that you would immediately put in. Amityville Horror, I guess, would be the closest one to it.
Maybe Candyman. I don't know. I haven't seen any of these. Or Child's Play.
Actually, Child's Play is probably the closest one because it's also got a remake now. Just what about just the franchises in general? Let's discuss what we think of like this franchise as a whole, looking at the big picture. Because like we both said, like neither of us really hated any of these.
Yeah, this is this falls the least in terms of quality.
It's lowest. I'd almost say Halloween has the lowest lows, maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, actually, no, probably Friday the 13th.
No way, Friday the 13th got better. I found
but then Jason Goes to Hell was awful.
Yeah, but then Jason X was amazing.
Yeah. No, I'm
Freddy
not saying.
vs.
I'm not
Jason was
saying.
amazing.
Like, I'm just saying which has the lowest low.
I'm saying
if you were to rank every single film in all of these, which franchise would the one at the bottom belong to?
Halloween.
You reckon?
Yeah, that 4, 5, 6 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Those were garbage, man.
They're pretty bad.
Whereas, yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'd say the ones with the most offer would be Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Nightmare on Elm Street. Like those, like Nightmare on Elm Street goes to some super interesting places, and you've got things like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is like just a real cool movie, like unironically a cool idea for a movie. So I would put Nightmare first, I think, and then Texas Chainsaw. Because Nightmare went to places that were as good as the first one, in my opinion, whereas Texas Chainsaw just isn't that bad.
Yeah, and because it didn't take itself seriously as well, it didn't have it kind of didn't have as far to fall, but by design almost.
Yeah. So ranking the franchises in terms of how many points they would score, like a purely mathematical formula, I'd go Nightmare, Texas, Friday, Halloween. Despite the fact that Halloween probably has one of the better films in general.
Yeah.
Although, even maybe I'm being too harsh on Halloween, because Halloween then had H2O and then also the 2018 one, which I really enjoyed. But then it had fucking the one after H2O, which like ruins Oh my god, that's the worst one. That's the that because that one's offensive, right? Like Halloween 4, 5, 6 are like boring and dumb. Halloween Resurrection was offensive, man. I don't know. Halloween's the one I have the most complicated feelings with.
Yeah. There was a thing that was I saw that was like rank the franchises so bad it's good entries. So you've got Halloween Resurrection, Jason X, Texas Chainsaw 3D, and Freddy's Dead, I think.
I barely remember Freddy's Dead.
Yeah.
I'd say Jason X is the best one.
Yeah, Jason X is fucking awesome.
Jason X is, again, it's unironically a good time.
Yeah, but then
maybe a little bit ironically.
And then Halloween Resurrection is so bad.
Halloween's not even so bad, it's good.
It's so stupid.
I would not put that as the so bad it's good Halloween movie. I don't know what one I would, but it's not that one.
Maybe Rob Zombie's first Halloween.
Yeah. I don't think Halloween has a so bad it's good one.
Yeah. The more I think about Rob Zombie's ones, I actually quite like that. I like that. But it's funny, like, it feels like Rob Zombie should have made a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie.
Yeah.
He does like dumb hillbillies real well, and maybe Laurie Strode shouldn't be one, but maybe Sally Hardesty could be one.
Yeah. That's a good point. Nice.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre feels like the least sacred in a way.
Even though the first one's probably the most self-serious.
Yeah. Anyway, we talk about titles a lot on this podcast. So, interesting thing. The original has chainsaw as 2 words.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the only one to do so. While the original theatrical release poster and many references to the film render its title as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1 word, the official spelling is Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Per the film's opening credits, it's also the title with which the film is registered with the US Copyright Office.
Interesting. Okay,
what do you think of the title and the?
It's great. Everything. It's so gritty and alarming. It's such an alarming title. It just it just sounds so violent.
It's a very true crimey kind of title.
Yeah. No, I really like the title.
What do you think of the subsequent titles?
I mean, there's Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which I hate that
making
format.
the title the subtitle.
Yeah. So I would have just called that I would have just called that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, especially because what makes that one more Leatherface? Yeah, it's like how one of the working titles for Final Destination 3 was Cheating Death. And it's like they're all about cheating death. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too many problems with the subsequent titles, I guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like the Next Generation and the beginning are like just boring.
Yeah. Why is the Next Generation called the Next Generation as well?
Yeah.
There's nothing about it that is like a passing the torch kind of vibe.
Yeah. Also, the comes and goes a little bit.
Yeah, true.
The titles.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously I'd appreciate some more consistency across them, but yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, Next Generation is just Texas Chainsaw Massacre, not the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, none of these would be as good as Head Cheese, so.
Yeah, the Head Cheese.
The Head Cheese Chainsaw Massacre.
All right, so we're on to our last segment, second last segment, called Continue the Franchise. So there's a few continuations. One, according to Wikipedia, is a film called The Texas Vibrator Massacre, which was a 2008 parody directed by Rob Rotten. This is pornographic in nature.
No.
There's a bunch of comic books, bunch of novels, that kind of thing. So, following the release of Leatherface, the producers had the rights to make 5 more Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. However, in April 2015, the producers stated that the fate of the potential films would largely depend on the financial reception and perceived fan reactions regarding the 2017 prequel. She later clarified in 2017 that they'd lost the franchise rights due to the time it took to release it.
They gave them 5 more.
Yeah.
They were going to. That's insane. That's almost half the series.
On August 24th, 2018, Legendary Pictures bought the rights to the franchise with a new film and a TV series in development. On September 19th, 2019, like 2 weeks ago, it was announced that Feed Alvarez would be producing the next film, who is also known for doing the Evil Dead remake and
Girl in the Spider's
Web. And also, I noticed on IMDb there's a film called Texas Chainsaw Massacre Carnage, which is coming out next year. That's a fan film, and they have plans for a sequel.
But the Feet isn't directing.
He's producing.
Yeah,
but he could end up directing.
That's been talked about in the same vein as the Halloween new sequel. So it'll be a sequel that ignores every other film that came out after the first one. It's essentially they saw how well Halloween 2018 did and was like, well, let's do this again.
Yeah. All right. Now, have you got a continuation of the franchise? Because I hear you have a lot of continuations of the franchise.
Yeah, I just thought I'd do a silly one this week.
Cool, and because I need yours to do mine. So
okay, so my continue the franchise I was like, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So American state, object, event. And I was like, what if I did one of these for every single state in America, excluding Texas, because it's already got one. So, Richard, I don't know if I have plots for any of these. We could talk about them if you want to discuss them.
Do you have 49 of them?
Yeah.
Cool. Is this going to be the podvid this week with like a mock-up poster for each of them?
No, God, who's going to make them?
Let us know in the comments if you want to do this.
Yeah, feel free to make these posters. We'll share them on our Instagram if you want to make posters for any of these. So I had some help from my friends Stephen, Kate, Rory, and Lucas. So shout out to those guys who we sat in a lounge last night at like 10 to midnight, and I was just like, all right, what about this state? What about this state? So I had some help, and I've got some notes for some of them, but not all of them. So here we go. In alphabetical order of the states.
This is going to take a long time, isn't it?
I can just write. I barely have anything to say about most of them. I just think it's funny. It's just a funny. Yeah. It just sounds funny. Go ahead. You know, The Alabama sledgehammer slaughter, the Alaska cordless drill kneecapping, the Arizona baseball bat bludgeoning, the Arkansas curb stomping, the California beanbag smothering, the Colorado shoelace strangling, the Connecticut duct tape asphyxiation. I quite like that one. That's quite fun. It rolls off the tongue. The Delaware axolotl revolution. The Florida missile scare. The Georgia airborne skin disease. The Hawaii teacup clobbering. The Idaho district yard sale. The Illinois furry invasion. The Indiana 2-minute short film festival. The Iowa black ice crisis.
Nice.
The Kansas condom shortage. The Kentucky self-image problem. The Louisiana free climbing accident. The Maine asbestos fest. The Maryland smallpox resurgence. The Massachusetts annual regicide. we knew we wanted to do one that was regicide, but we're like, all right, the Massachusetts something regicide. And then I was like, the Massachusetts sword regicide. It doesn't really make sense. And this was like annual. And I was like, oh my God. Every year they do this. Where are we up to? The Michigan gangbang. The Minnesota motorboating crash. Now, that is not a motorboat that crashed. That is the motorboating industry. Too many people were buying motorboats and the industry crashed.
Nice.
Just to be clear. The Mississippi suspicious sycophant. The Missouri doghouse legislation. The Nebraska Club Penguin data leak. So everyone from Nebraska who had a Club Penguin account got their data leaked. The Nevada hubcap challenge, some kind of fun thing that the kids are doing. The New Hampshire chokehold ban. The New Jersey rapture rehearsal. The New Mexico bumper sticker boom. The New York vaccine riot. The North Carolina dental hygiene blog. The North Dakota Bitcoin think tank. The Ohio marmalade flood. The Oklahoma email follow-up. The Oregon Public Service announcement, the Pennsylvania pineapple apology, the Rhode Island traffic jam, the South Carolina Holocaust denial, the South Dakota Paper Cut Foundation, the Tennessee gonorrhea outbreak, the Utah summer solstice ritual, the Vermont sock puppet heist, the Virginia Woolf novel. But to be clear, it's a novel about wolves, and it was written in Virginia.
Yeah.
The Washington ethnic cleansing, the West Virginia wolf novel, which is the sequel to the Virginia wolf novel, the Wisconsin blood clot analysis, and the Wyoming anal fisher fad.
Whew. Okay.
So,
what's your favorite of those? What's your favorite one that would be a horror movie?
what was the I really like the Idaho district yard sale, but no, the Connecticut duct tape asphyxiation. I think is the best
Connecticut duct tape asphyxiation. Okay, so this is my film. I came up with this after watching like the 2003, 2006 films, and then it's kind of elements of it are done in the following two films. So this was inspired before that. But we see a teenager sitting in front of a TV watching the Connecticut duct tape asphyxiation, which is about a group of cannibals, much like in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Basically, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Group of cannibals, and then he has a moment where he like thinks to himself, and he's silent for a moment, and then he gets up and goes, "Dad." He goes and speaks to his dad. He goes, "Hey, Dad, I just watched the Connecticut duct tape asphyxiation. Are we bad people?" And then his dad turns around, and it's Leatherface. And so the main character has just turned 18 and is supposed to take on the family business of being a cannibal and chainsaw massacring people. But he's, a millennial, and he cares about the environment. He's vegan. He doesn't want to carry on. So he's sent out to lure some sexy teens back to the house. So after like getting them back to the house, he realizes how gross it is to eat humans, and he tries to help them escape. So it's a cross between like, I'm thinking the tone is obviously very meta and silly. I'm thinking kind of like Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That like,
Sure.
The main character is creating all these scenarios where it can look like they've killed the teenagers, but he's actually helping them escape.
Nice. That's a good idea.
So it's a meta sequel.
The Texas Chainsaw Reformation.
The Texas Chainsaw Redemption.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's all we bloody have time for.
Cool.
Which, actually, we have as much time as we want on this podcast. Because...
we work on our own time.
Yeah, and this podcast now shares the distinction with a few other episodes as being longer than any of the films we're talking about. So, next week, we're going to be talking about a franchise which was suggested by... next fortnight. Fuck! Suggested by our Patreon, a horror franchise. We put up some horror franchises to be voted on.
Because it's scary time.
Because it's scary time. It's the scary month.
Spooky season.
And we are going to be covering. Dun dun
Oh no.
dun.
Oh, I wish I wasn't swimming naked in this ocean.
It's me. I'm Jaws.
The 4 Jaws films, which is about as fringe horror as the genre allows. It's funny we put up horror franchises. I feel like Jaws is like just in. I guess it is, but it's not like, the other ones are more Halloween-y.
Yeah.
Centric.
Well, anyway,
you don't see people dressing up as sexy sharks.
I can
Halloween.
finally cross Jaws off my list. Whenever people like my go-to film that I'm ashamed to say I haven't seen is Jaws. So I'll be glad to finally get rid of that.
I haven't seen it as an adult,
and then
I've
I can
never
cross that off
seen the sequels.
And then go to number 2, which is Godfather Part 2.
Same.
And then 3rd is Beetlejuice. 4th is Labyrinth. Actually, probably Labyrinth and Beetlejuice swap those two.
Man, I didn't know that. I haven't seen any of them either.
Really?
Yeah, but I didn't know you had a list. I wish I'd prepared something.
Well, those are just like the ones I think about.
I've never seen like Usual Suspects.
Have you not seen Usual Suspects?
No, I've never seen LA Confidential.
I've seen half of it. I've
never seen.
What
else have I never seen? I've never seen.
Let us know what movie
Citizen
you've
Kane.
never seen. Citizen Kane's great.
Yeah, I've never seen. Let us know what you want to see us watch. I guess it'll be relevant to what we do.
Anyway,
this is a Halloween. This is the beginning of our spooky season.
Halloween season.
Occult Popture.
Occult Popture.
And if you like this, please find us on Facebook. By the way, Richard's still copying me, but I've just muted his audio in the edit for this, so you can't hear him. In fact, I'm going to mute your whole audio.
Well, now
episode.
I don't have to do it because they're just going to think that you've muted me.
No, you're muted. I'm not even going to put your track in. It's just going to be a track of me being like, oh yeah. Oh, cool. So check out us, Cult Popture, on Facebook and YouTube. I have made a Cult Popture podcast YouTube channel now, which I'm slowly uploading our back catalogue to, and we'll probably end up removing the episodes from the main channel. So you can subscribe to. They're not all up yet, but you can subscribe to that now. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes if you want to have a YouTube version of the show, which I don't know how many people listen on YouTube, but it's there for those reasons. And thank you very much for listening. We're also on Twitter and Instagram, and you can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. Richard, it's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And if you're listening to this, don't get massacred by a chainsaw.
Or do. Live your life.
Yeah, don't let me tell you what to do.